Next Generation Advocacy Grant. So State Farm has been a proud sponsor of Habitat for Humanity International since 2007 and supports programs such as the campus chapters and younger youth engagement. So this grant is designed to spark innovation and inspire the next generation of individuals playing a key role in helping Habitat improve home affordability through advocacy. So we do want to just say thank you, State Farm, for your support. So to give everyone an idea of how our program is going to flow today, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the mission of South County Habitat, as well as the partnership with the University of Rhode Island and the Habitat for Humanity student chapter. And I also have a little bit of background on the senator that I'd like to educate everyone with. And also, of course, give Senator Reed the opportunity to present any opening remarks before we jump into our questions today. So we have a variety of questions that we have prepared to ask Senator Reed that's going to be focused on housing and other issue areas. And we're just very excited and eager for this discussion. We're going to provide the audience an opportunity to ask questions. So if you're tuning in from WebEx, the way that you can interact is there's to your right-hand side, there should be a Q&A feature. So please use that for questions only. And then there is a chat feature. So if you're on this call and you'd like to say how you heard about this event or what organization, school, or business you're representing today, I'd love to know where folks are coming from, so please utilize that feature. And if you're tuning in from Facebook Live, please feel free to comment on the live stream that we will have on our page. And we're going to try and answer as many questions as possible as we move through the program. If we don't get to your question, we'll make sure that there's some type of follow-up, of course. So with that being said, a little bit about South County Habitat for Humanity. Our affiliate was founded in 1990 and has been dedicated to eliminating substandard housing locally and worldwide. We believe that everyone should have a simple, durable place to live in dignity and safety, and that decent shelters and decent communities should be a matter of conscience and action for all. South County Habitat provides vital homeownership opportunities to low-income families. We empower our families through our sweat equity model, and we structure our mortgages to be affordable. So for over 20 years, we have partnered with the University of Rhode Island. I'm actually an alumni of the university myself and was a volunteer on the URI Habitat for Humanity student chapter, so I'm very glad we're all here today. And the great thing about this partnership is that it enriches both organizations to help overcome the burdens of substandard housing locally in our community. And in 2009, we had an expanded campus-wide partnership that was launched to complete a 4-house development on Old North Road near the Emporium. So by the fall of 2015, URI students, faculty, and administration worked together to raise over $500,000 for the Old North neighborhood, as well as multiple other projects locally. So included in that neighborhood is our Home for a Hero. This house is called Home for a Local Family, and it was built specifically for a local veteran who is a Purple Heart recipient and served in both the Marines and the Army. Additionally, this neighborhood is home to University of Rhode Island employees and other local families, all who did their 200 to 400 hours of sweat equity to help build their forever home. And the University of Rhode Island Habitat for Humanity student chapter is a student-led, student-initiated organization. So for the last 27 years, the chapter has brought students together by coordinating volunteer opportunities at our build sites and at the Restore, educating the community around issues related to habitat and housing, and also engaging in fundraising and speaking to our community officials to prioritize shelter in our community. So once again, I just want to thank the University of Rhode Island Center for Career and Experiential Education. Amy Albert is behind the scenes on this call right now, and very fortunate to have her helping us put this program on today. I also want to thank the URI Habitat for Humanity student chapter for your continued support. And also, with that being said, I want to thank you, Senator Jack Reed, for carving out the time to hop on the call to us. So before we begin our questions, I want to give a little bit of bio on the senator and tell you all more about his journey to Congress. So Senator Reed is a former Army Ranger and a national leader on defense and economic issues. He grew up in Cranston, Rhode Island. His father was a school custodian who served in the U.S. Navy during World War II, and his mother was a homemaker. The senator went on to attend West Point, the John F. Kennedy School of Government, and Harvard Law School. After retiring from active duty, working at a law firm, and serving on several levels of government, the people of Rhode Island elected Reed in '96 to succeed Claiborne Pell as Rhode Island's 46th U.S. Senator and reelected him in 2002, 2008, and 2014. He serves as senior member of the Banking, Housing, and Urban Development Committee, where he has focused on consumer education and protection. And a member of the powerful Appropriations Committee, Reed is the top Democrat on the Subcommittee on Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, where he focuses on direct federal funding to the Ocean State to create jobs, strengthen our infrastructure, and support economic and community development. Senator Reed is the ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, recognizing that Rhode Island's defense industry is critical to national security and our state's economy. And Senator Reed has been a leader at the federal level in growing Rhode Island's defense sector and bringing resources to the state. Thanks to his efforts on the Armed Services and Appropriations Committees, coupled with Rhode Island's talented defense workers, the U.S. Navy plans to begin building the next generation of submarines in the Ocean State, creating thousands of new, good-paying jobs in Rhode Island. Moving my notes here. So he also served as the ex officio member on the Select Committee on Intelligence. So thank you so much, Senator Reed, for joining us today. Before we dive into our questions for you, I'd love to give you the opportunity for some opening remarks.
Alicia, a very kind introduction. I want to salute the Suffolk County anniversary. Our job for these 30 for humanity. Citizenship is 27 years old. So this service has been long-term and very, very important to the. Thank you. Now, as Colin, the director for all the that he's done, volunteer, South County Habitat for Humanity, really a volunteer effort. It's the best of America, and it's the best of Rhode Island. So thank you for that. Also, let me recognize Nick Ware and Caitlin Brown, Emma Costco, and forward to a great discussion. And thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you, Senator, for joining us and for that kind introduction. So with that being said, let's kick off our questions. First question we have for you, Senator, is that South County Habitat for Humanity, of course, we appreciate your housing advocacy and leadership on the Senate Transportation and HUD Subcommittee. So can you tell us a little bit more about how your interest in housing began and why it continues to be a priority?
Well, when I was a attorney in Rhode Island after my Army service, I was in and the parts of it to be the legal for Amos House. At that point, it was a food kitchen for possessed most South Providence. I had to go ahead and buy a, and so I worked on that. And I became housing is that there were literally hundreds and hundreds of people on the street. Their health was being impaired, their ability to organize their life was being impaired. And I'm very proud. I was there for a few years as the council, but now Amos House has 15 buildings in South Providence. They've got training programs. It's amazing. So it shows the power of housing, and they built significant housing facilities for their patrons because they recognize housing is really the key to so many other things. So that's how I got started. And I know from firsthand experience, a house is critical.
Thank you, Senator. I think Brenda Clement at Housing Works Rhode Island, they're a fabulous organization. They produce a housing fact book every year to paint a picture of housing affordability in Rhode Island. And she says it best, that the path to economic opportunity is at your front door. So I just have to mirror what you say about how housing supports our communities. And the next question is going to come from Nicole.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm currently the URI Habitat for Humanity campus chapter president. So my question is, Senator, you probably hear this often from your constituents for a variety of topics they care about in their community, but why should people care about affordable housing?
Well, affordable is central to so many other things. How can a child go to school if they have to move 3 or 4 times during a school year because their parents can't afford the house, they've been evicted, or they just have to go? How can you apply for a job nowadays if you don't have an address, if you can't be in a location close enough so you can access work? It's actually it's so critical for everything that's being done. In fact, one statistic is really, I think, illuminating. There are many people on homeless who are on Medicaid. They have access to health care. We've run the numbers, and someone who's homeless on Medicaid probably costs the state about $14,000 a year. The average Medicaid recipient, someone in a home, $8,200. So this is a cost directly to all of us. It's not just the bad luck of those individuals. So in this COVID environment too, where is everyone told to go? Go home. Don't go out. Stay among your family and friends. When you don't have a home, you can't do that. You're forced, and so it's another vector probably in this COVID pandemic. So for so many reasons, it makes sense. It's not just the right thing to do; it's the smart thing to do economically and in so many ways.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, I'm sure a topic that'll come up in our conversation today is how COVID has had its impact on us in Rhode Island, but of course across the United States, as we've seen that we've had a housing affordability crisis before COVID, and there's definitely been significant impacts as a direct result of COVID. So thank you for that. The next question I have for you is that we know that there's been conversations with the current administration about addressing the affordable housing crisis. We've heard that there has been potentially cutting funding from housing programs or changing programs designed to provide housing assistance to and for low-income residents. What do you believe is the role of the federal government in the development and preservation of affordable housing?
Well, I think the federal government has a very strong role. It has to be the communities, but the federal government has a very strong role to play because it goes to the basic, as I indicated in my previous response, sort of the basic quality of life of so many people, and also the most cost-effective and economic way to literally run the country. When there's affordable housing, that means people can have stability, they can have access to employment, they can get the job training they need for employment, and all these other factors that they talk about, and we all talk about. We've got to retrain people for a new technological age, et cetera. Well, if you don't have a stable housing, then you're not going to be really able to accept that kind of training in a credible way, in my view. So I think the federal government should have a strong role, and this administration has done everything it can to undermine, I think, affordable housing. They haven't been supportive. We've managed to get some things through indeed on a bipartisan basis in the Senate. It's not because of the administration.
Thank you, Senator. Our next question is going to come from Caitlin.
Hello, my name is Caitlin O'Brien, and I am the Build Coordinator at the university's Habitat chapter. And my question for you, millions of renters and people experiencing homelessness are left without the resources and protections they need to remain stably housed during and after the coronavirus pandemic. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, 30 to 40 million renters may lose their homes by the end of 2020. What legislative solutions can the federal government introduce or currently support to ensure that we are meeting the housing needs of renters, homeowners, and landlords?
Well, I've already submitted legislation that Housing Assistance Fund at Senate Bill 3 2.0. And it's designed to do exactly what you said, because we already know there's a crisis coming. There are so many people who have not paid their rent or pay their mortgages, up, and it's going to be a tsunami when it hits, and we have to be ready, and we have to start now. This legislation is built on the Hardest Hit Fund. That's a program that I helped sponsor and direct back in 2010 when we were recovering from the financial crisis of 08 and 09. And what it did was give 18 states, including Rhode Island, who were the hardest hit in terms of residential evictions and foreclosures, it gave the state housing agencies resources to go in and help pay for back rent, back mortgages, to give people a chance to get them back on their feet. Once they were on their feet, they were able to handle on their own their rent and their mortgages. Now, what this fund would do would be a significant amount of money in the billions of dollars, and it would allow for rental assistance, mortgage delinquency, default payments, foreclosure, or loss of utility services such as water or gas and Wi-Fi. So it's so critical now for schooling. And it's something that is absolutely necessary, because I'm afraid if we don't pass this, the predictions of the housing authorities will come through, and we will have this chaos. And it'll be not just economic, it'll be social chaos as people are put out of their homes and they're looking for places to go. So just one little caveat with respect to the Hardest Hit Fund: it didn't cover back rent, it covered the mortgage, but this legislation does cover back rent. So we're going to try to cover the whole spectrum. And so we're working on it.
Thank you, Senator. The next question, we're going to send it back over to Nicole.
Hello again. So my question pertains to students. Owning a home has been considered a part of the American dream, but many millennials are finding that homes are just too expensive, and they also carry the burden of excessive student loan debt. Additionally, during this pandemic, housing prices are continuing to rise. We know that student loan debt has a significant impact on a potential homebuyer's ability to qualify for a home. What legislative solutions can the federal government introduce or currently support to ensure student loan borrowers have the opportunity to purchase a home?
Well, student borrowing has become another grave problem and you indicate one of the major issues, the inability to buy a home, because it takes years, decades really, to pay off student debt. Also, it limits job choice. It limits career path. It inhibits our very productive use of all this talent that's coming out of colleges. One thing we can do is lower the interest rates as low as possible. We can do that right now rather than charging higher interest rates. And I think that's something, again, that if we had the right political combination in Washington, we would do that quickly. We also have to fully support the programs that are on the books now that allow students to have their loans forgiven by going to be teachers and other things. This administration, through the Department of Education, has tried their darndest to really make it difficult to forgive loans. And people have thought, frankly, after teaching for 7 or 8 years, that they were qualified, and they called up and found on a technicality, no, you have to keep paying. So we can straighten that out. We can streamline debt reduction. The other thing we can do is we can make public service like Habitat for Humanity and AmeriCorps something that would allow you to have your loans forgiven. We should have a very aggressive program. If someone chose to go into AmeriCorps, for example, and gave 2 years of service, their 4 years of state tuition would be wiped out, or sort of equivalent to that. That's another thing we can do. I've put in an Action for National Service Act, which would really invigorate AmeriCorps and other national service programs, and enlarge them, and also have these benefits going to the AmeriCorps members or to the other volunteer members. The other thing we could do and should do is increase the Pell Grant. Back in the 60s, when Senator Pell, my predecessor, started the Pell Grant, it covered 80% of the tuition to a state college. Now it covers 80%. So we've lost a lot over the years. And if we get back up to that level or close to that level, then we should be in better shape. And then also we have to have the institutions do their part, the colleges, particularly the private for-profit schools, who are sometimes notorious for taking students in with poor curriculums and getting as much federal money as they can and then leaving them without the skills to work. So what I've proposed is that for default levels, at a certain point, the school would start sharing the default with the federal government. That would give them an incentive to have better curriculum, better instruction, and ensure that the students that are taking these loans have the wherewithal to pay them back or the job prospects to pay it back. So those are some of the things that we should do, and we can try to do them.
Thank you, Senator, for your comments and also for your comment on the AmeriCorps program. I'm an AmeriCorps alumni, and I know our Habitat affiliate, as well as a variety of Habitat affiliates across the country, utilize that AmeriCorps program to really help build our capacity and serve more families. So thank you for your support in that. I know right now we have an AmeriCorps member with us, and he's on his second term of 1,700 hours, and I foresee the AmeriCorps program becoming more popular with folks who are trying to enter the job market right now, where we're dealing with lots of jobs being gone because of the pandemic. So thank you for your continued support. And as we talk about supporting investments in certain federal programs, I want to talk a little bit more about the home and CDBG programs. So these are two programs that we at South County Habitat support, and we support increased investments in that. We see it as a valuable resource, again, for Habitat affiliates in our part of the country, but all across the country as well. And we found that in our process of obtaining those supports, the compliance process for these programs are virtually inaccessible to small nonprofits like ourselves, where we're typically building single-family homeownership units in South County. So I was just curious, do you have any thoughts on making that process more accessible for both large and small nonprofit organizations?
Well, HUD, the Housing and Development Department, provides technical assistance of both these programs, the home program, the CDBG program. But again, I think given their attitude towards affordable housing and their attitude that's been displayed recently, they're not providing the kind of focused technical assistance, particularly for small grantees or for small non-for-profits. So one thing I would try to do is to not only encourage them, but hopefully direct them to be more aggressive and more active. CBG funds are very, very useful. So is the home funds. As we've got to get them out into the community, though, and also not just to the big not-for-profits, but for the small ones. So this is important. One other thing too is that if anyone, a small agency or large agency, don't care which, has an issue or question, they should contact my office. James Ahn is in my office, and he can be you can connect through the office to James, and he's someone that can give you advice and also try to rattle a cage, if you will, over at HUD to see what they can do. We can help create this dialogue between the HUD and the agency or the not-for-profit so that they can sort of figure out what's going on.
Thank you, Senator. Switching topics as we work through our program here, something that's very relevant and has always been relevant in the housing world is that we know that there is a legacy of discrimination in housing policy that impacts where people can live and how our communities look today. And as we said before, the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated challenges in many communities that were shaped by these racial inequities. So in your opinion, what can the federal government do to address the racial homeownership gap across the United States?
Well, first, we all are recognizing that Black Lives Matter, that we have to do more, not only for the African American community, but for the Latino community and other communities that have seen discrimination. But the discrimination against African Americans in this country has been long-term and very, very significant. We've made some progress. I was a young person during the 60s with the civil rights movement. got some voting legislation, really started a process, but we're not there yet. I think one of the things that's most alarming to me is USA Today did an article on June 29th, and they said specifically home ownership is critical to the accumulation of wealth and a factor in the stark difference between the net worth of white families. The net worth of white families in 2016 was $171,000 versus black families. The net worth was $17,150, according to the Brookings Institution. So a lot of that is owning a home. And so we have to do a lot more in terms of home ownership. Part of it is ensuring that families can have both training and savings to buy that first home. And one thing I did on a bipartisan basis with Senator Blunt was enhance the HUD Family Self-Sufficiency Act. And this is a program that enrolls people in public housing or having a voucher and gives them training about financial planning, about savings, about buying a home. And I visited some families in Silver Lake in Providence, and they were in the program. They were already saving money, and they were expected or hoped within a year or two to be able to buy their home. So those are some of the things we have to do. Very practical, on the ground efforts to ensure that families have the training, that public housing is not a dead end, it's a way up. That they can get that help, they can get the training, they can, with hard work, they can go ahead and buy that home. Once they have that home, then their health, their income, their status improves immensely.
Thank you, Senator. And I just want to remind attendees that if you do have any questions, if you're on the WebEx call, feel free to use that Q&A feature. If you're on Facebook Live, please feel free to leave a comment. If you do have any questions, we'll try and get to those throughout our program. Switching gears, I'm going to pass it right back over to Caitlin for our next question.
Hello again. So this question is in regards to the 2020 census. So the 2020 census counts every person living in the United States and 5 U.S. territories, providing critical data to support our communities. How does this data support Rhode Islanders, including affordable housing, and how can we ensure there is a fair and accurate census count?
Senator, it looks like your mic is still muted.
All right, am I okay now? Am I okay? Thank you. The census is critical, as Caitlin points out, because it does many things. One thing it does is establish representation of the state. We have 2 members of Congress, but we're on the edge in terms of population where we could lose a member. And that would diminish our clout in DC. We have 2 tremendous congressmen, David Cicilline and Jim Landry. Jim Landry, University of Rhode Island, he does so much for the university. He's terrific, and so is David. But so that's one issue. But there's also the issue that the census numbers really provide the funding levels for critical programs. They actually use the population numbers generated by the census to determine how much money Rhode Island will get. One example we just talked about is the CDBG program, Community Development Block Grant Program. Rhode Island received $9.9 million based on our census numbers. If those census numbers are undercounted, then we will get less money than we should receive. So that's critical. The lead hazard reduction program, which I've been very involved, received $12 million last year based on census data. If the census data was undercounted, we would have received less. So this is critical for housing, particularly for housing. And, the Trump administration has been trying to do everything they can to undermine this census. They tried to cut off a month, make it end October 30th. A judge ordered them, no, you can't do that. So they said, okay, October 5th. Now they're in court, et cetera. So the point is, I hope everyone has filled out their census form. It's absolutely critical. You can do it on the internet. You can do it by phone. There's so many ways to do it, but it's critical. And we've got to have a good census.
And Senator, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe if you're a student attending school in state, you do want to complete the census if you live off campus or on campus. Even if you're at the university, you do want to make sure you go ahead and complete the census. Is that correct?
The question is, if you're on campus, do you want to register from the campus? That would help
Right,
us.
like,
So I would encourage you to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
That would help us. Thank you.
Next, I'm going to pass it over to Emma.
Hi, my name's Emma. I'm a junior at the University of Rhode Island. My question for you is, what action steps can you or I, students and advocates for affordable housing, take to ensure that housing is a priority in this year's elections?
Well, I think the first, let me say this as loud and as I can. Vote. You've got to vote because this whole election is about people going to the polls. And I think you've got to vote for those people who you feel will be the supporters of affordable housing. Now, I'll be very candid. I've indicated throughout the discussion this morning how this administration has very consciously tried to downplay affordable housing, not make the commitment to it, make it more difficult to get information about how things are done. And I don't think that's the way to go. So I think the best thing you could do is vote. I think you also should, by the way, this goes hand in hand with what I just said, is that look at the record of the individual who you're choosing between, the two or more, and see which one has taken a position on affordable housing that it's strong and progressive, and then make the choice based on that. But the key thing goes back to vote, 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 vote.
All right. If anyone leaves this call today, they should know how important it is to vote if they're going to take away one thing. And
That's right.
So looking at Rhode Island and looking at housing federally, we know that there are housing challenges that differ from community to community. The housing challenges we may face with the lack of infrastructure in South County may not be a housing challenge for developers in other parts of the state. So my next question relates to our work at Habitat for Humanity and how we've seen the steady, if not growing, urgency across the United States regarding affordable housing and housing affordability in general. So how can the federal government work to ensure that different housing affordability challenges in rural communities and urban communities are addressed?
Well, your focus is on rural communities, and unfortunately, this is consistent with my previous comments about the administration and about some of my colleagues in the Congress. Just recently, 20 senators wrote a letter to ask for increased funding of rural housing. No Republicans would join the letter in the Senate. So even though they represent, many of them, primarily rural areas, they're not interested in additional funding. We need additional funding for rural communities, and that's something that we're going to have to do. We recognize it because we feel that this issue of affordable housing is not a East Coast issue or a Northeast issue. This is a United States issue, and that the same problems that would inhibit a center city individual who's homeless would inhibit someone in a rural community who doesn't have a home or has moved from place to place. So this is a problem for the United States. It's an American problem. We think that we should have more funding for rural housing. And unfortunately, we haven't seen the same enthusiasm. Some do, but we haven't seen the same enthusiasm on the other side.
Thank you, Senator. And I know I can speak for our affiliate when we're very supportive of obviously being in the rural area of the USDA program, which allows us to work with our future homeowners. And the USDA program allows them to purchase a home in a town in our county that is affordable. So I do want to thank you for your support for those programs and also your support for increasing opportunities for both urban and rural communities. Next question is going to come from Caitlin.
So as we know, voting is a very important topic that we've covered, and that is what my next question is in relation to. So elections give us the power to set priorities on the issues most important to us and for years to come. With 1 in 7 families in Rhode Island spending too much of their income on housing, and COVID-19 putting a strain on renters, homeowners, and people experiencing homelessness across the country, we believe housing is an issue that needs attention. Where can listeners check to see the most recent and accurate information on where they are registered to vote and the voting options they have?
Well, the best place to go initially is the Secretary of State's website. Nellie Gobert is our Secretary of State. You can find it easily. Just go and Google Secretary of State Rhode Island, and you'll get the website, and that'll direct you to their voting information. And they have voting information for the entire state. And also, you could call the Secretary of State's office and ask questions. Registrations are held in the town halls of the community you live in. So that's another place you could check. But I would just go to the Secretary of State's office. She has a website and she's terrific. So if you remember, vote. And the second thing to remember is Secretary of State of Rhode Island, Nellie Gobert website for information, and call her if you have to.
Thank you, Senator. I do have to applaud Secretary Gorbea and her staff. The voter registration platform online is very user-friendly for folks to get everything they need to know about where they're registered to vote, where they can go cast their vote. So thank you for that valuable information. And in the chat, there are links for folks who are in state or maybe listeners who are out of state as to where they can access that information they need so that they can cast their vote. And with that being said, so Senator Reed, my mother is a mail carrier. She has been for at least, I think, 10 years now, and she's been working harder than ever, and I've seen it. And, as COVID-19 continues to evolve, many states are preparing for the vote by mail options for this year election. And I think a lot of folks are wondering, how can voters be assured that we can trust the Postal Service to securely handle our ballots? Now, I trust my mom with my life, but other voters might feel differently. So what can you give us as wisdom to have some sense of security with our Postal Service?
Well, the postal workers, like your mother, are dedicated and principled people, and they're going to do their best, I am sure, to get the mail out. Also, there's been legal actions by many groups against the Postmaster General to try to reverse some of the changes he made deliberately to try to impede the post for this election. Not all of them have been fully recognized yet, but there's a growing sense, I think, that right now the post office is better prepared than it was several weeks ago when they were in this shadow of political intrigue. So they're going to do their best. Is vote early if you want to vote by mail. The earlier you get your ballot in, the better off you are, because they just have more time to deliver it. The other thing, too, is people might not realize that you can vote in person before Election Day. Again, the Secretary of State will have that information. I believe, I won't quote a date because I don't want to give misinformation, but it's about 2 weeks before the actual Election Day. And you can just walk into the town hall and cast your vote. And your votes, you've already completed the vote. You don't have to line up on Election Day, et cetera. So I do believe that in Rhode Island, particularly, the mail ballots will be counted, and also the early ballots and the machine votes will be counted.
Thank you, Senator. And I also wanted to make a comment that if folks do have questions regarding voting, you can also dial the 211 line through United Way. They do have a voter information network there. So if you do have questions and if you do not have access to the internet, please feel free to dial 211 to get access to those resources for the questions that you may have. I also wanted to make a comment for folks who may be tuning in through Facebook. We'll make sure that we publish the website links for you to access voter materials that we have here in our WebEx platform today, so you will not miss out on that opportunity there. So the next question we have is going to come from Emma.
So what is the best way for your constituents to get in contact with you and stay informed on the most up-to-date information as it relates to COVID relief?
Well, there's several ways. First, my website, which is www.reed.senate, senate.gov, G-O-V. Go there and you'll get access to the information we have, etc. The other way is to call my office, 401-943-3100. And don't be shy to reach out about to my staff. They're terrific people. They work very hard. They want to get back to you. They want to listen to you, because if you have a problem, other people have a problem, and they'll be able to, if they can help you, they'll be able to anticipate other folks and maybe help them avoid the same problem. And housing matters, I indicated before, James On is my expert on housing. So, going through the website or calling the 401 number, they will connect you to him. So I would, both the website and the phone are ready access to my office.
Thank you so much, Senator. So we have one more question for today, and that's going to come from Nicole.
So some may argue that this is the most challenging question of today, but what is your favorite thing about Rhode Island?
Well, I love Rhode Island. I grew up here. I had the great opportunity to have good parents, good friends, good schools, and great opportunities. But I think probably the one thing that I like the best is the ability as a senator and as a congressman to go back and just talk to Rhode Islanders, to get advice from them, to see them on the street, to get their, what they think should be done, good ideas. Many things that I've done in the United States Congress has been a result of some Rhode Islanders stopping me and saying, what would be a good idea? Have you ever thought about this? I must say, great pride in the people of Rhode Island. They've handled themselves with so much, I think, class in this COVID crisis. When you go to a store, you see people wear masks because they respect the health of other people, their own health. They try very consciously to follow rules for the protection of other people. So I guess being able to represent these good people and listen to them and get their advice directly is something that I think is incredibly important.
Thank you, Senator. I think I can agree, as well as others, that we also love Rhode Island for those reasons. And of course, thank you for your time today. We all on this call are aware that housing is really the core of it all when we're looking at positive community outcomes, and having your support for housing and housing affordability is crucial, especially during this pandemic. So before we log off, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share for our viewers, including our URI students, staff, faculty, and Habitat community?
Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. It's been a real privilege. I want to thank you, Alicia, for doing such a superb job. Also, Nicole, Caitlin, Emma, and all who asked questions. Thank you very, very much. One of the things I recall very fondly is being with the Habitat for Humanity, the South County Habitat, when we sort of dedicated the house of Catherine Chabot. It was in 2017. She was a hardworking young woman, a mother who had a child, Christian, a young son who had some medical issues, and you could just see how this has changed her life. She now has her own home. Her son has a place to grow up and prosper. And that's just sent this message to me about how important Habitat for Humanity is, how much you do, and how much volunteers count. And there were many URI volunteers there at that dedication, and they had spent hours building the house. So thank you. In a time of pandemic, economic crisis, civil crisis, it's encouraging and inspiring to know that there are people like you and your colleagues at Habitat, and particularly the URI. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Senator. And as someone who's working directly with volunteers, I can definitely say we cannot do our work without the help and support of volunteers for our mission. In our last 30 years, we've served over 100 families, and we're continuing to through our construction and renovation of homes. And we're also working locally with the students. We're very grateful for that. And overall, today, that concludes our program. Again, thank you so much, Senator Reed and the University of Rhode Island Center for Career and Experiential Education. Thank you, as well as the University of Rhode Island Habitat for Humanity Student Chapter. We're always happy to work with you all and provide support. And anyone else who's joined on the call today, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us talk about housing and other important issues. And also, thank you once again to our friends at State Farm for awarding us with the State Farm Next Gen Advocacy Grant. This is our first time receiving this grant, and we're really eager and excited to continue our work of creating a world where everyone has a decent place to live. And I'm just going to echo it one more time that the deadline to register to vote in Rhode Island is October 4th, so that's Sunday. And the deadline to submit a mail ballot application is October 13th. Please contact us at South County Habitat if you need access to those materials. We'd be happy to provide that for you. Yes, Senator.
One point, the in-person voting in Rhode Island begins October 14th. So on October 14th, you can go to your town or city hall and vote. I'm going to do it. Thank you.
My town hall is right down the street from me, so I'm going to walk there and do that too, Senator Reed. So on behalf of everyone at South County Habitat for Humanity, thank you everyone for joining us today, tuning into our first ever Housing Talks virtual discussion. Just want to say thank you, take care, stay safe, wear your mask, and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Alicia. Bye now. Bye, everyone.